co-hosts. I'm here today with Alicia from over the pond. She's actually a few ponds away, to be fair, in Australia. She has been a guest on my small, humble YouTube channel before, a few weeks back, and that was very popular. So with that demand, I've decided to have her back on today. This is going to be a bit more of a discussion format, but we're going to be talking about the carnivore diet specifically and dealing with appetite, hunger signals, things around that. So welcome back on.
Thank you so much for having me again, Jonathan. Pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. Yeah. So my first thing I want to talk about is right. So there's this idea that we should eat intuitively. We know that if we're eating meat associated fat, we should be about all right. We'll get a taste for either protein or fat. No one's going to be just doing chicken breasts for 50 years. There's that element of you need that fat with it, with that beef, dairy, eggs, a fatty steak, anything like that. So what do you think about like portion sizes and things like that? So people have this idea that we need to have maybe like a fistful of protein or a thumb of butter or whatever it is. So what do you think towards that?
Look, I used to be the person eating lots of plain chicken breasts with no fat, so I'm glad that that's not my fate for the rest of my life. I'm so glad that I found carnivore. Um, Look, I think particularly when you're first coming to carnivore, you should just definitely follow your body's signals and eat as much as you want. I think there's a really big tendency for a lot of people that come into carnivore, probably because they don't actually know how to eat. And it's kind of relearning how to nourish and feed your body. I think there's a tendency to come in sometimes, and I can speak for myself, with the restrictive mindset and looking at the portions and going, no, I still need to measure and count and do all those things. And I don't think that really serves a great deal of purpose, or it's not very helpful in the beginning, particularly when those come to carnivore that have a lot of healing to do. And the body is absolutely screaming for animal flesh, animal fats. And I think if we come in with that mindset of thinking about calories, thinking about macros, all those types of things, we could really do ourselves a disservice in the beginning, and not really jumpstart that healing process, which is so needed. And like I said, I definitely came in with that mindset, and I felt like it was wrong to go back for more meat, but I was like, I really need that. I'm really hungry. That just wasn't enough. And so gradually, as you get to know your appetite, and it opens up a little bit more, you start to recognize those hunger cues and the satiety far better than you would have in the beginning. And particularly, like I said, if you come from a background of binge restrict behaviors and any hormonal damage in particular.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you're someone that's going to be, it's a double-edged sword, really. So if you're someone that's coming from disordered eating and that you eat too little, you might benefit from tracking your intake and saying, okay, I need to hit this amount each day. The closer you get to that target of whatever protein, fat grams, or whatever size meals you're having, the better. Because you want to recover your metabolic health, you want to gain, appropriate weight back as needed. You want to get yourself into a better state, essentially. So yeah, there's different applications here. I'll say the average person probably does just need to listen to their body, eat enough protein, enough fat. I always say it's literally
Yeah,
that
I'd,
simple.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Your satiety and hunger cues do seem to be more even keel when you do that as well. I mean, my meals are tiny compared to a lot of carnivores, but what you got to think is the cumulative amount that I eat over the day is vastly more than most people's, you know? So I just find that my tolerance is that I need more meals. I've tried doing one meal a day, I've tried doing two, I've tried all these different things. It doesn't work well. I don't feel good. My digestion suffers. My energy plummets after having these big meals. So why do I do it? That's not to
Mm.
say if time goes on, my goals change and my situation changes, that I might have to do something more restrictive in terms of having less meals. That might be the case. I'm not going to be arrogant to say, there's only one way to do things for me. We all learn and we all adapt to it. So next question as well is about adaptation. So when you started the diet, what did you notice about adaptation? What was it that you found most useful or least useful?
For me, look, I took some really detailed notes on my adaptation. I found the whole experience quite fascinating. And as I stated in the previous video I did with you, I stepped down the ladder from keto to carnivore. So I was expecting the transition to not be that jarring or that severe, but it still was for me. Like I had a lot of electrolyte disturbance, a lot of oxalate dumping, things like that. So, I think as well, people kind of want to know the exact time frame of how long it takes to get fat adapted and carnivore adapted, and that's going to be so personal. It really depends on your history, how much damage you've done to your body over the years. Have you come from a standard English, Australian, wherever you are, diet? Have you been heavily carb and sugar addicted? So there's going to be lots of variables around that. It did take me a good couple of months. Some people are like, 2 weeks, you'll be fine. But, some people's journey is a little bit longer. And I think there's a tendency as well in the thick of adaptation when things are feeling, a little bit hairy and a little bit full on to go, oh my gosh, carnivore is not the diet for me. I feel really unwell. I'm going to stop this and go back to where I was. But if people can just be patient and push through, you're changing fuel sources and your body is going through so much change, and it is a bit of a stress on the body. So I highly encourage people during that time to just stick with nailing the nutrition. If you feel like exercise at that time for you just isn't achievable, don't do it. It took me a good couple of weeks to start lifting with the intensity that I was looking for. At first you feel like your workouts really suffer a bit, particularly if you like to lift hard and heavy like we do. But it's just about knowing that that time isn't going to last forever and there's greener pastures on the other side.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I tend to agree a lot of the people that have on here. It's funny, that, isn't it?
It's a good
So
thing.
yeah, thank God for that. But what I will do in the future is get people on that maybe I don't agree with and have a little discussion with them. Maybe I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's different levers that you can pull to get different results. So for me, at the time when I started it, I was doing very high protein and lowish, moderate fat. In ratio by
Mm,
gram sort of thing. Um, I did experience very, very, very bad oxalate dumping. I'm still scarred from it, to be honest.
mm,
And it's been
yeah.
coming and going ever since. I've got horrendous scars from it. But that just goes to show you, if you did all this from square one when you started the diet, well, when you started living, just eat a proper human diet, that never would have happened. So you bring up some great points about adjusting things carefully, meticulously. Don't rush it. Don't, if you can't go to the gym because your
No.
electrolytes are all over the shop, your heart rate is going everywhere. Just take your time, get enough protein in, enough fat. Don't
Yeah.
don't fall into these like current things. They're more for targeting different problems that someone might be having with the diet. So that's why some different tactics are useful. But honestly, just listen to your satiety cues and try to ease into it slowly. So don't go from a vegan diet to a carnivore diet, for Christ's sake. That's not going to be too good, is it?
I think for some people, you really have to work out whether you're a moderator or an abstainer, and kind of get your journey to fit those parameters. It kind of seems to be the most success people have when they work out, are they going to jump in head first, or are they the person that needs to ease in gradually? And yeah, 100%, like it can just be way too much of a shock for the body and you can make yourself incredibly ill. So I think, coming to it with a moderate approach for a lot of people is going to work much better in the long run, and they're going to stick with it and reap all the benefits.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. You just got to be meticulous, careful, think about things. Be thorough. Don't take things to
Mm,
chance. And you know, the next thing I want to talk about is a current trend. So I released a video, perhaps I don't know, a week, 2 weeks ago, maybe a bit longer, with Emily Harvo.
Mm.
That video has skyrocketed my channel. Since putting her on my channel, I've got a lot of benefits from it. I've got some great questions as well around what she had to say. And what it is, I want to talk a little bit about um, fat intake, specifically ratios. So there's a big thing nowadays about the carnivore diet and having a high fat approach. So, in your
Yes.
opinion, when do you think that might be useful or applicable?
Well, look, I guess I would classify myself as a high fat carnivore. So I can definitely speak to my experience. When I first came to carnivore, my sole focus was just getting animal product in my mouth. I didn't really think about the fat. It was more about the I must have meat. And at first, I couldn't get satiated. It didn't matter what I did. My appetite was absolutely through the roof. I like to the point where I was embarrassed to eat in public because of the amount of food that I would be putting in my mouth. And I've previously stated, I'm a petite 5'2" woman. And in those days, I could have easily put away 2 kilos, no stress. I remember in the beginning sitting there with a plate full of burger patties and I'd cooked up a kilo and I just kept on eating and I was almost all the way through it. And I was almost in tears because my brain was going, stop, stop, you're eating too much. But my body was going, I need this, I want this, please keep feeding me. And so I kept pushing through that and noticing that every time I'd eat meat, I just wasn't feeling that I'm full feeling. And I do know that because I've really tanked my hormones with some binge restrict behaviors, that I've got some damage there. So the brain and the body just are so confused about what full actually means. But the moment that I really started adding the fat via beef trimmings and particularly butter and me are just, we're besties. I love that stuff. That was an absolute game changer for me. And really ensuring that my fat ratio is 80 and above. 70 for me is too low. I just don't feel full and content. I really need that. And I've noticed now, usually a kilo of meat is where I'm at, but that's actually started to naturally drop. And I'm in now I just celebrated my 5th month yesterday as a carnivore. And it's taken me that long to finally, my body is just so much calmer. My satiety is like, yep, I understand what you're giving me. And it understands as well that volume on the plate doesn't necessarily equal feeling satiated. You do not have to have this mammoth meal. And I like to volume eat, I'll admit it. And I know you do too. But it's been a real learning experience to understand that I can feed and nourish my body, but the quantity on the plate just doesn't have to be, half a cow every single time. There are ways of getting that satiation, and animal fat is the key.
Yeah, I agree. The thing as well, what you got to think about is the influencers in the online community that are doing these, shopping trips. They're buying these, kilo steaks and having like one or two a day. That's exception to the norm. The most people out there are doing beef mince, eggs, butter, and other foods, whatever they can physically tolerate. So that's
Mm-hmm.
you got to be realistic about these things. So when I post my meals up on Instagram, and Leisha does just the same on Facebook, the meals are what the meals are. That is it. That
Yeah.
is what she and I eat. There's no other fluff to it. There's no secret method or sneaking extra foods in. That is literally it. When your fat intake goes up, your food volume will dramatically decrease by default. Your body doesn't need excess protein. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I've someone that's tinkered with these things before. I've gone from anywhere between 180 and 550 grams of protein. Not many people have done that. I've noticed that my body, at least, is very adaptive. Whatever I throw at it, it will tolerate and it will do a pretty good job of it. So when I lowered my protein recently, I did increase my fat. Initially, I increased it
Mm.
too much too fast, so I had some issues with digestion. Fine, but my body, being a bodybuilder, having a fast metabolism, most people, my body tends to be more adaptive in that my results are accelerated. So I'm quite lucky in that sort of
Mm.
extent. So I can test run all these things. So I can see, okay, someone tried this. What do they think? All right, well, I'm going to try that. I only get results in half the time and identify what the pros and cons are for each. So there are definitely pros and cons to this sort of thing. Your body's got this inbuilt area of tolerance. You know, if Alicia went around and said, okay, I'm going to increase my protein 20% and decrease my fat by 20% by energy value, she would initially suffer, but her body would adapt to it. But she might
Yeah.
then get to a stumbling point 6 months down the line where she's like, I need way more fat than this, and that's completely fine. You know, it's completely normal. So don't stress about it. The next thing as well is, so I talk about physiques a lot, um, how to create a good body composition. That's in the name. So I want to talk about that today. So
Yeah.
Alicia, you're someone that started, you started quite overweight yonks ago. You've lost that weight, right? You're now at the point where you sort of want to maximize your muscle tissue without getting fat, so to speak. So in your mind, what ideas do you have around that? What is your approach currently to do that?
Look, it's a bit of a two-pronged approach for me. I'm really straddling the line of wanting to continue building my body up, but also honoring that hormonal healing. So my main sort of approach at the moment is I train 4 to 5 days a week, lifting as hard and heavy as I can, combined with my nutrition, my high fat carnivore. And what I'm noticing now for me is, I'm eating far more and far more energy than I would have previously. And my body composition has changed quite dramatically. And I actually took some progress pictures the other day of side on of my belly. And that's always been a trouble spot for me. I've, really struggled throughout my life to get that lower belly fat in particular. It just hangs in there. And also, I've got a tiny bit of sort of loose, I guess, skin from when I was an obese person, and that's just been my body's lot. But I've noticed that has really lifted and tightened, and I'm not doing anything insane like the hours of ridiculous cardio that I used to do in this vain attempt to try and see those recomp results. Nothing at all. Like, I used to do so much fasted cardio to the point where I was almost sick, and eating meals that were basically, if you saw them, you wouldn't have even give them to a child. They were that small. But now I'm feeling so energetic and, so engaged in my body. Like, I can really hear and understand what my body's asking for at every meal, at every training session. And look, I think that people will come to carnivore with, different ideas and goals. And I think if you're a numbers driven person, it can be, that can be a great journey for you. And I say that as long as numbers and being involved in, being a very data driven person is an anxiety inducing for you, and you're not constantly tethered to your app and worrying about whether you've hit this and hit that. Some people might actually benefit from just stepping away from tracking and just, as I always say, listen to your body and just trying that avenue. There might be some things that happen to your body where, the number on the scale might go up. That's happened to me. I put on 4 kilos, but I've never felt better. My body composition, insanely, hasn't been this good ever. And I am just eating until I feel satisfied, full, and nourished. And so I would say, look, come into carnivore with the view that you are looking for optimal health. I wouldn't view it as that I'm going to go into this as my, I guess, like my little dietary trick. I think that's not the best way to approach it. I would look at it and say, okay, I want to get all these amazing benefits. I want to have glowing skin. I want to have amazing sleep. I want my stress and cortisol so low. I want my insulin way, way down. And then I think all those amazing things that happen to your body are a natural follow on.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. As well about the tracking. So I did a video a little while ago. It wasn't a very well made one, I admit. But it was about hunger essentially. So I was talking about my hunger experiment. So for 1 week,
Mhm.
I didn't track anything I was eating. I am someone that has tracked meticulously for 7 years or more at this point.
Mm.
That means everything I've eaten, if I've had a milkshake for like 6, 7 years ago, I've tracked everything, every gram. And what I noticed was when I didn't track anything, my intake was near enough exactly the same as what it was when I was tracking it. And I gained
Mm.
something like zero point 0.2 kilograms of body weight. Um, for me, that's nothing. In a week, that's nothing. That's quite
Mm.
normal to fluctuate. Women will know they fluctuate much more than that sometimes, especially during
Oh
times.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it just goes to show, like, for me, so where I get from that point is, I tried the priming thing. So this is where
Ah,
I think, yes, I think I lasted about 2 or 3 days. Then I
ah,
got very strong negative signals that made me never want to do it again. I didn't tolerate it very well. Um,
okay.
but what that might say to me as an individual is that I didn't need to do it. It wasn't, if I link together my experiment on hunger, so I
Mm.
eat when I'm hungry, fine, that maintains body weight, that's my equilibrium, fine. Then I tried the priming thing, I couldn't do it, and that put two and two together. My body is fine as it is. I just need to do what I'm currently doing. So until that changes, until symptoms get worse of whatever reason, I don't need to change anything I'm doing. You know, that's what people say about people say to me, "Oh, you shouldn't have artificial sweeteners, this, that, and the other." I'm like, yeah, but by all means, you shouldn't. I don't recommend it to anyone. I don't have any diet plans that I give
Mm.
out to people where they have artificial sweeteners in. I say use them if you want to use them, but if they become problematic, take them out. It's that simple. And for me, it's not been
Yeah.
problematic yet. Um, but for some people, it may trigger responses where they can become addicted to these things. I'm someone that can take it out and put it back in, no problem. Same with medications. So yeah, you might be a great person to talk to about that. But how have you found it's like affected your like day-to-day habits, way of thinking? So like, do you have any addictive behaviors that has changed or anything like that?
Look, it's carnivore. I think I previously stated has definitely cured me of my sugar addiction, my overriding sugar addiction, and artificial sweeteners. Since we're on that topic, like I've said before, I'm definitely not a moderator. I'm an abstainer, and I need to stay. Any sweet taste for me immediately triggers all of those feelings. So I just know for me, it's I'm far better off without it. And it's such an amazing feeling to not be tethered to constantly thinking about the dessert that I need to have after my meals, because that was something that just carried on for years and years and years for me. Um, I think one of the most amazing things that I found about the carnivore diet is the absolute zen that I feel compared to what I was before I found it. And, having that inflammation in your body so far down and so soothed and so calm, it just, life just seems so much easier. The things that I used to stress about that probably weren't even that stressful, it's just that my body couldn't handle it because there was so much white noise going on, via my diet and via what I thought was good nutrition and good health, and it just wasn't. And yeah, I've always say I wish I could bottle this feeling and just hand it out to everyone, because there's no feeling greater than the what we call the zero carb zen.
Yeah, I find that as well. I'm someone with all these like mental health problems and difficulties. I've been diagnosed with everything near enough. Well, I say near enough, probably most things anyway. But I found the symptoms of all those things have been reduced drastically. It's like the thing is, like, people that will come to this diet and listen to this sort of story and talk about mental health, whatever, they're gonna think, oh, it doesn't really apply to me. I don't have depression, don't have anxiety. All right. Well, what happens like 20 years down the line when you do? What are you gonna do then?
Hmm.
You see what I mean? You got to have these tools in your toolbox. And the carnivore diet, although it is the diet for human beings, some people just use it as a tool. I know people that do a strict carnivore diet for a few weeks, Then they might have
Mm.
Christmas, fine. They'll just celebrate family, eat whatever, get back on the carnivore diet, lose interest, go on holiday. Then, so the very least people can use this as a tool, you know, and you're going to get the benefits while you're on the diet. So my advice to people is to stay on it for as long as you can, ideally. So yeah.
100%. I think if, people, I know I always say, and I have people in my inbox every single day, just like so curious about carnivore, and you probably get the same thing. They just want to ask questions and pick your brain because they can't believe that a nutritional protocol like this could be so, so powerful. And, the stories that I get told to me, it's, I hear all these, I'm struggling with my mental health. I'm struggling with my energy, my weight, my workouts, whatever it may be. And I'm just like, all you need to do is eat animal products for a minimum, I try and say, of at least 60 to 90 days to really give your body a good reset. And if you just, I think if everyone just gave it a go for that period of time, there would be so many more carnivores wandering around on this planet today. Because once you experience all those benefits simply from changing your diet, how can you go back? I can't even stomach the smell of plant food anymore. My body just goes, no, I do not want, I don't
Yeah.
understand it. All it craves every single day is just meat and lots of fatty meat.
Yeah, I find that as well. It's funny you mentioned that. I was in a supermarket the other day, and when you first walk in, at least in this country, there is usually the fruit section first, vegetables, that sort of thing. I
Mm.
walk past it as quickly as possible. I find the smell of it very unappealing. It almost tastes not
Yeah.
right, you know. And people that it sounds bizarre to people watching this that aren't carnivores, but the majority of people that are will know exactly what we're talking about. And make shopping so much easier as well. But the other thing is as well,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't know what it's like where you're from, but when you go shopping and you see the person in front or behind you by the conveyor belt, putting the chopping onto the belt, you notice that they eat different foods, packets of crisps, potato chips for American folks, weird fruit and vegetables and just bizarre foods like pizzas, takeaways, ready meals, that sort of nonsense stuff.
Yeah.
And when you actually look at them, I mean, this is going to sound quite rude, but I don't intend it to be, honestly. They don't look well. They've all got dark
Mm.
eye circles. Their skin's not quite, doesn't have that plumpness. I mean, you look at Leisha and myself to some degree. I mean, I don't look that great, but my skin's more plump than it used to be. The same with, imagine Alicia's probably experienced the same thing. So there's other outside of the scale weight benefits.
Yeah. Oh, there is. And look, I do have a little sneaky look in people's trolleys, and if they're in front of me at the checkout, and you know, I really wish that I could go in and replace those foods for them. And I think I would talk anybody's ear off about carnivore that would listen, to be perfectly honest. And you know what? Once upon a time, I was that person in the supermarket loading up with things that either I thought were health foods that are sold in our supermarkets, or just not even. Like, I used to eat hideous amounts of sugar and carbohydrate and really overly processed stuff just because I was lazy, and I was also an alcoholic. And what do drunk people like? They like fast, easy, convenient food that they can shove in a microwave at 2 a.m. when they're blind drunk in the kitchen. So, my main focus during those years, wasn't to take care of myself. And, at the age of 42, I look at my life now and I look at my health and, things like my skin and my hair, is so much better. And, used to fall out so much. Like my boyfriend used to just pull clumps out of the shower, just going, "What is going on with you?" And I was cold all the time, and my mood was just all over the place. And particularly the medical condition I have, the adenomyosis. I have experienced so much relief with the carnivore diet. Like, this is probably the best month I've had. I'm bit of TMI for the fellas if you don't want to hear about that time of the month, but I'm about 4 days out and I should be bloated out like I'm 6 months pregnant, and I should be a raging mess, full of pain. And I am bouncing off the walls, happy, skipping down the road. And this is all thanks to my diet.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the 30% of females that are watching this video won't mind too much. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? There's always other benefits, like another TMI sort of thing. Toilet roll.
Ah,
I barely use it. Sometimes don't bother. I don't need to. That's how powerful the diet is, in that you don't have all this excess roughage and whatnot going through your system that you have to clean up, you know? I don't know, you've probably experienced the same thing, I imagine.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, carnivore poop is probably one of the most hotly talked about subjects. And, people that are non-carnivore are always just like, but how do you go to the toilet? And it's like everybody else, but we just don't go as much because we don't have the volume, because our bodies are taking in every single bit of nutrition that we give it. There's nothing really wasted. So, I used to suffer from terrible IBS. I got diagnosed with that in high school. Just, oh man, I remember days and nights just being doubled over, because my guts were just absolutely inflamed. And again, I don't want to say that carnivore is the miracle cure and the silver bullet for everybody, but my gosh, you're going to reap a lot of benefits. And I definitely have. And I still, to this day, like, you probably notice it too. Every day you'll notice maybe a little pain has gone away, or there's, some little benefit that you didn't even realize that you were getting. But, it's just like as your health continues to get into a better and better space, those benefits are just going to keep on coming.
Yeah, and on that point, before we wrap this up, um, just thought of it actually is, well, it depends what your allegiances are towards religion and spirituality, but my spirituality is better with it. Not in a sort of woo weird way, but like I do feel a lot more connected to people around me. Like my social interactions are better. Um, as
Yeah,
someone who doesn't
yeah,
interact very
I
well,
agree.
I notice.
Yeah, I think it's there's something that, yeah, I've never had so much confidence, and again, I think that speaks to all that inflammation and white noise being really low, and our bodies feeling calm and nourished and soothed. And I think as well, there's a lot of, great connection to be found in the carnivore community, because we're all on this amazing journey. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, our ultimate goal is to live our best healthy lives. And I think, when you've got that zero carb zen and you're feeling so good, the connections with the human beings around you are going to flow a lot better, and you're going to feel more comfortable and confident to engage with the world around you, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think many people talk about that, and it does add up to a lot. Like, I mean, as human beings, we're so superficial, where it's so much about what we look like, what it says on a scale, how our clothes fit, all this sort of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I already had, without sounding arrogant, I already had good physique prior to the diet. I didn't need to elevate my outcomes, by doing whatever. I must admit, it has made it easier to maintain what I do have. But that's just one thing. Look at a whole lot of things that you can improve. People go onto these diets for weight loss and things. That's just, you'll get your normal, natural, acceptable body weight. Eventually, if you
Yeah.
follow the diet for long enough. You don't have to do all these like odd things. There's no carb cycling involved. I mean, there's an element of like tweaking your macros to eke out different results, but it just comes down to following the diet, listen to your body. And people say that and you think, oh, everyone says that. Is it true?
Yeah.
In
It
essence,
can't
it
be
near
that
enough
easy.
is. It near enough is, and it sounds bizarre, but it near enough is that way. So before we wrap this up, do you have any closing thoughts about what we've discussed today?
Look, it's been a fantastic discussion, and I really love being a part of your channel, and watching it grow. And I hope that more people jump on board and view the content and continue with their carnivore journeys. And I think if anyone's watching this and considering you know going to the other side, the meat field side, come on over. There are so many benefits and so many people that want to engage and welcome you into the community and support you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.